The Machina are machines with personality, constructed hundreds of years ago. People have forgotten how they're built, with only a handful even remembering how to maintain them. Of course, they basically handle that themselves now. Some Machina still dutifully serve divers or colonies, while others have wandered into the dust to become a part of the evolving natural world. In-game, Machina allow you to draw cards and play more allies.
What's going on, YouTube? Earth Power here, joined by CBH.
What's up?
And the man, the myth, the legend, Gorby.
What's up, guys and gals and non-binary pals?
And we are here to bring you the Machina set review. So, another 10 cards, very similar to Biofauna and Colony. This is the third faction in the group that make up the last 10 cards of the 30-card series of cards you guys can pick from. And we will be jumping into them in the same fashion that we've jumped into them for the past couple of videos here. So, thoughts on these, on the Machina set, and I'd like to start with Gorby before we jump into some of the cards. I know a few of your favorite cards come out of this faction.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean the Machina set in particular, I think, has more efficient keyword cards than any other faction, which is just supremely important to Dust as a game. You know, being able to string together those ally combos and make your turns interesting and have a sort of more robust feel to the game. They are a bit more top-heavy cost-wise than other factions as well. They have the fewest number of 3 and below costed drops. Everything else is just 4 to 6. I think there's 3 cards that cost less than 3 energy, and the rest are all 4 and higher. So they are a bit, pricey. But they're just so dynamic and interesting. They let you manipulate the game state in a lot of really cool ways. And yeah, I really, really dig this particular faction.
So, Christian, from your perspective, where do you land on this? I know it's been a while since you've played with a lot of these cards, as we've mentioned in some of the past videos.
Yeah, I totally agree with Gorby. And another thing is, I think, whereas Biofauna was sort of more shieldy and card advantagey, Colony had a lot of attack cards. If you watch those 2 reviews, if you haven't, go check them out. But I think this faction has a lot of enablers, I would call them. It's just things that sort of allow your turns to be more explosive and get more actions. I mean, you'll see what we're talking about when we get into some of the cards, but there's a lot of things in this faction that allow you to do more things in your turn than simply play an action and pass or play one action and then efficient.
Yeah, I think one of the things I'm excited to talk about as we get into these cards, and we'll jump into them here in just a second, is like you said, though, it's everything being very combo centric with the Machina mechanic. A lot of these cards kind of interweave with all of the other cards that we've already talked about. Whereas Colony is very attack heavy, try to disrupt your opponents. Biofauna is more retrieval, and shield and protect. And then I think this faction, and again, I might be proved wrong by the end of this again, now that I'm actually looking at all of these cards, close up, but it's to speak to exactly what the both of you just said. Everything's highly efficient, very combo centric, and these cards are meant to kind of play with the other 2 factions and kind of interweave themselves into them all.
Yeah,
So, let's pull up our first one here, Mr. Wellspring Portal. And I say Mr. I don't know that this is actually a creature so much as it is just a thing. But yeah, and, our first 2 cost. So 2 cost efficient. Draw cards until you have 4 in your hand. Pretty straightforward. I think where this card becomes useful is now that we know how the actual mechanics of the game work, which we figured out after the first set review, was you can play efficient cards at any point in your turn. So you can play out a hand, get as close to 1, 2, or less cards in your hand, and then just draw back up and continue the cycle, depending on what you draw and what ends up being efficient with energy cells and things like that.
Yeah, that's exactly the power of Wellspring Portal. It's a 2 cost, so it's not like you cannot buy it early, but it's not really a thing you want to buy early. But later in the game, like you said, you can set yourself up for really explosive turns, and this is one of those cards that can really save you, surprisingly, against like attack-heavy opponents. Like if someone's discarding or dusting a lot of cards from your hand, you can strategically just keep the portal, and then you start your turn. All of a sudden, you can pretty immediately like play the other thing in your hand, portal up to back up to 4. By the late game, your deck's probably full of gas. You'd hope so. You'd probably get more plays out of that. And yeah, portal. Yeah, that's exactly the card I was looking at when I remembered. Hey, this faction has a lot of enablers. It really lets you do a lot of things in your turn.
Yeah, I mean it's just an absolute like mid to late game stud of a card. It's not like Christian said, it's not something you're going to be buying super early. Um, but once players are starting to really sort of get into their rhythm and start piecing together their combos, Wellspring Portal is something you're really going to want uh, to keep gas in your hand and extend your turn to build those meaningful combos out, to start collecting relics and maybe buying some extra fusion fragments or something like that. One thing I also like about it is that it's a good playing from a head card. So if you have 2 relics already, you're dusting 2 cards. And, obviously when you're ahead, players are probably going to be targeting you more. So Wellspring Portal is just a really good pickup once you started really hitting the late game as well. Because,
Yeah.
you're taking card advantage away from yourself just by virtue of having those 2 relics. Wellspring lets you keep that turn going the way it just totally normally would.
Yeah, and I think that's and Christian touched on it, and you I think hit the nail on the head. Is just this isn't a card you want early. It's one of the very few 2 drops that you're not picking up early on in the game. It's way more powerful late, which is rare for a 2 drop. The lower cost cards in these sets, as we've seen in the past 2 factions, just become less wantable, I guess, for lack of a better word, less effective the longer the game goes. So, this mid to late, when things really start get going and you're just getting beat by opponents in your own relics, yeah, it's a cool card to be able to grab, especially if you are getting just your hand torn apart and two energy. If that's your turn, just grab a Wellspring Portal.
There you go.
All right, take it on over to Mr. Greenkeep Merchant. Christian, would you like to take this one?
Absolutely. Okay, it's another 2 cost, and it's another efficient card. This one is actually worth an energy by itself, and it says you may discard up to 3 cards from your hand, then draw that many. So kind of like a similar type of deal, right? We're seeing some card draw in this faction already, and I love that because I love drawing cards and doing stuff. Again, efficiency saves this card, so like you can play other things, or this is more of a thing where you'd probably want to start your turn with it. Like if you're having to discard cards from your hand, you need other stuff. So this card really shines, unlike the portal, when you actually do have like some sort of useless stuff in your hand. So usually you'd probably not have that many energy left in your deck in the later stages of the game, but if you are stuck with a few and you just happen to draw them with the Greenkeep Merchant, you can get them out of your hand and draw some other cards that actually have meaningful effects. Or if you're playing like a fusion shard strategy and you have some in your hand and you don't have anything that cares about them, you can quickly get rid of them just for the turn and draw some, again, a card with a meaningful effect. So I like this card too. Yeah, and it's actually better early than the portal because it's actually worth an energy, so that's nice.
Anything to add to that before we move on to the next one?
Not really. I mean, Christian pretty much nailed it. It's basically the exact opposite of the portal, right? I mean, this is sort of an early game powerhouse, letting you filter through your deck as you're starting to buy some of those heavier 4 and 5 drop cards. That's what you really want to be seeing to get those high energy plays going. And Greenkeep does that in a really efficient way by letting you just get rid of the chaff.
Yeah,
Toss it right into the discard pile and keep it moving.
yeah.
The
Christian
chaff.
touched on the fragment strats, which I've mentioned in some of the past videos, are some of my more favorite lines to play. I don't like dusting them early, even though that's a pretty common thing to do in this game early on in the game. And this guy lets you basically just hold them and use them if you need them. Otherwise, just drop them and fuel a strategy. And speaking of fusion fragment strats, we move on to a card I'm going to let Gorby take over from the helm. It's your boy.
My boy, the FUSEFORGE Blacksmith. I love this card. So it's a 3-drop Machina. It has the efficient keyword, so big thumbs up there. It's worth an energy by itself, and the effect of the card, you may discard a fusion fragment from your hand, and if you do, you gain 2 energy this turn. So it is just ruthlessly efficient. It's not bad in the early games. You are sort of hedging, not really hedging. You're sort of like, it's a massive tell, right? If you buy the FUSEFORGE early, you're saying like, I'm kind of, you know, at least partially in, if not all in, on these, fusion fragment strategies. So you sort of open yourself up to a little bit of disruption there. But mid and late game, this card is just an absolute house. Your deck by then should be pretty clean of all just the early energy cells and things like that. So you can really hit those fusion fragments, chain multiple blacksmiths together just for massive energy turns. Um, it's just it's one of my favorite cards in the whole set. I love playing around this card if I can.
Isn't
I
this
think
was this the first strategy you took in our very first test session that we were both part of a tabletop simulator?
It was. I saw that card and I was immediately like, that's the guy. That's the one right there.
I think to speak to that strategy you're putting on too is, again, I circle back to the common strats of just, these fusion fragments are useless early on in the game, so we dust them. But like you said, even though it's a tell, if this is the first card you grab, turn one, pick one, you're gonna be able to get one. It's always a guarantee because you can't ever start with more than 2 fusion fragments. And even if you do, you shuffle them in or discard an energy cell if you can, dust an energy cell early, grab this guy. I think the odds of pulling this with the fusion fragment after your second turn is like a 1 in 3. Having the 2 pieces in your next hand of 5 after your second turn, if you're dusting energy cells on both of those turns, so that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
It's hard not to do. Essentially, is just have a massive energy turn 2 turns after you pick this up on turn 1. So neat strats if it's on the board and it's part of the pool.
Yeah, I mean, just to do some quick math, if you have a hand of 5 and it's a blacksmith and a fragment and 3 energy, that's a 6 buy, and that is absolutely massive in the early game. I mean, obviously you can buy like 2 3s or like a 4 and a 2, but the fact that you can buy one of those super powerhouse 6s early before people are ready for those kind of effects, I mean, it's just like the ceiling on the FUSEFORGE blacksmith strategy, if you draw the right combination of cards, is ridiculously high.
I think, Carl, in our playtesting game that we did after the initial unboxing, my exact turn 1, turn 2 progression was blacksmith into Thistledown Hawk.
Yeah.
Which is
It's
just
disgusting.
that whole strat just carried me throughout the game. Like,
you talk about on the box, it says games are usually taking 30 to 60 minutes, and granted, that's probably with 4 people, but Gorby had all 6 relics bought by maybe turn 6 or 7. And I don't know how I still came out of that game okay, but it was just, his ability to buy relic. I was literally scrounging for my second relic just to hit the numbers that he had hit, but his deck was so energy efficient because of this. So, not something to sleep on. But speaking of things I mean, nothing in this set is anything to sleep on because all of these cards are great. But we will move on to Mr. RUSTBURN Furnace. The first of the Machina cards that provides a victory point. It's a 4 cost, non-efficient. There is no efficiency on this card, but it has an effect that lets you dust up to 2 cards from your hand and then gain 2 energy per card dusted using this effect. Now, I know you guys have a little bit of familiarity with this card before it went through a few of its changes. And I know this is one of those cards that had the
This was the second most disgustingly broken card that Spencer ever put in the game. The first most disgustingly broken card is also in this faction, so stay tuned, everybody. There's something even worse. But I think when this first happened, wasn't there just no cap on it? You could just dust as many as you wanted.
Yeah, we were. The games basically devolved into who could Rustburn into Wellspring.
It was so
keep the
gross.
combo going.
Also, Wellspring also drew more cards back then too, so it was like just the nuts, totally insane.
It was just absolutely. You would dump your whole hand, refill it, combo out again. I think there was definitely some points where people were buying like 2 relics a turn.
Yeah, I did that once for sure.
Yeah,
it was like gross.
Thank God these cards are like severely toned down. But
it's way less fun now, though.
I suppose
it's fun exactly one time. If you guys want to
Exactly.
know, hey, get this on Kickstarter, get the cards, and then like for one game, just pretend Furnace doesn't have a cap, and you'll see what we're talking about. But then
Yeah,
you won't want
really.
to do it again.
But I
Yep.
mean, the card is still just an absolute house in its own right. I mean, it's 4 energy for a single card. You're going to be dusting cards generally that you probably don't really need, getting rid of extra energy cells, maybe some fusion fragments, if you're not in on one of those strats, or even just like early game cards that you bought that maybe you now don't want, that aren't cohesive with your new strategy. Um, it's sticking with that Machina theme of sort of just ruthless efficiency.
Yeah, I think what I really like about this card, and even the previous three that we've looked at, is that none of these cards are really bad any of the times that you would have them in your hand. At almost any point in the game, with the exception of maybe Wellspring Portal early, but all of these cards have playability throughout the early, mid, and late game. They all fuel a strategy in some way or another in combo with other things that you're doing. And this card just speaks to that. It's cool. Here's 4 energy for 2 cards in your hand that you don't maybe necessarily need. And the dust playmat isn't just an end all be all. You can play out of that too. So if you got cards working from the dust pile, like your boy Thistledown Hawk, it's just dust 2 cards. That card, Thistledown Hawk's efficient, so just grab them back. Now you got 4 energy to play with. I think Thistledown Hawk provides energy itself. It's just there's all sorts of neat little nuts combos that this thing can fuel and play with.
Yeah, as you mentioned too, you mentioned it really quickly, but this does have a victory point that wasn't on the card when it was, disgustingly broken. But it's sort of like a compensatory buff that Spencer put in, and it's not insignificant, right? Like we mentioned, those one little victory point cards can be a tiebreaker easily in a game.
Yeah. All right. Move on to the next boy, Mr. HiveMind Drones. Christian, you can take this one. I think you guys also have experience with this one, if I'm not mistaken, or it might be the other one later on down the road. But
Yeah, the
you
art
guys-
changed on this one, so let me make sure I know what I'm talking about. Looks cool now. It's a 4 cost. It's efficient. Yay, more efficiency. Love to see it. It's worth an energy. When you play it, you draw a card, and if you discard or dust this ally on an opponent's turn, you may recruit a copy from Earth to your hand. Ooh, I like that it says from Earth to your hand. Yeah, it used to just say recruit.
Yeah.
You get some more going on. Yeah, actually, now I remember this card. I was like, wait a minute, where is this going? But yeah, this card is really sick. As you've probably seen in past videos, if you've watched them, check them out. There's some cards that attack opponents, but they choose what they're discarding. Usually they're just going to choose like an energy or a fragment or something that they don't want to, they can't really do much with. But hey, if you have this, this is a really sick early buy if there's attacking cards in the pool that don't cost a lot, because it's sort of just that effect that can get you. Like, are players just never going to attack you because they're afraid of you getting free recruitments? Or are they going to, target other players or something? Or are you actually just going to get some value out of this? One thing about this card is if multiple people go for it, they can disappear from the pool pretty quickly because people recruit extra, which is kind of fun. It's like really, really good for the first few turns and they're all gone. So that's a fun interaction. But even if they're all gone, it's efficient and it draws a card and it's worth an energy, which is a really good combination in this game because it effectively makes it a free card. Worth a thing.
I think my 2 points of interest there are really just to talk about the wording. Recruiting a copy from Earth. The 10-card pool that's in front of you that you're pulling from, that is what is referred to as Earth. That's the world that we're all playing in and playing from. So, I think that's super neat that that's just kind of a little nod to all of that, which is cool because it's so easy just to use very I don't know, for lack of a better word, just stale words that other card games use, and calling it Earth and referring to it in card text is really really just a nice touch. But then this card, like you said, the winning strategy, and I think something that we don't talk about a lot, and I say don't talk about, we haven't really had a chance to talk about it a lot, is that the other way to win a game is that three
It's 5.
cards from Earth disappear from the group.
Is it 3 or 5? I don't know. It's a number. It's 3?
I think it's 3. But
Okay.
yeah, once and it might be time to phone a friend again, but we'll figure it out and correct ourselves in the I don't know.
You'll put some
notes,
text on the
something.
screen, yeah.
Yeah, but when 3 piles disappear, that triggers the end game, and it's just like the relic. All the other players, after the last person picks their last card, all the other players play their last turn, and then you count victory points. So, HiveMind drones, if that's in the pool, this can be a very easy way to kind of trigger the end game if again, you've got opponents who are sleeping on it. So, neat little thing there. Gorby, any final thoughts before we move on to the next one?
Not much. I mean, it's just it's a really cool defensive dynamic for an archetype that doesn't have a whole lot of defense, right?
Yeah.
Like it creates those sort of cool little second guess scenarios. Like, do I really want to force him to discard? Maybe he just gets a free recruit, or you know, uh, maybe I should focus on a different opponent, try to disrupt them in some way to keep them from getting any unnecessary advantage. It creates just those little cool little head games that you get a lot of satisfaction from playing like competitive tabletop TCGs like Magic or something like that. And I just really like this card. You know,
The next boy, Mr. FUSEGATE Keeper. Gorby, you can take this one.
right. Give me
Do you
one
have it? Did I
second.
catch you with your pants down?
No, my pants are still on.
We
Oh,
can't see it from the waist
Uh,
down, so
Exactly. So this card is actually called Fusion Gatekeeper. The image is going to show FuseGate. This is just what Spencer provided for us. But if you go to the Kickstarter, which you should all be going to and backing, the card is called Fusion Gatekeeper.
yes. We mentioned that pre-video, and I still messed it up.
So this card, 4-drop efficient, sort of par for the course. You're seeing a theme here with all the Machina cards. Draw a card, so again, more enabling, and add efficient to the next ally you play this turn. So cards like the Lynx or any of the attackers from the colony that don't have efficient on their own, you can make them efficient and sort of keep the combo going a little bit longer. Drawing a card replacing itself, always welcome for any of these cards. And I think this is the one, Christian, that was just pretty freaking absurd the first time we tried to play with it.
yeah, it was definitely my vote. I think it costed less. I think it was only a 3 for a while, and I
It was a
also think
3,
it
yeah.
had an energy. I think the thing was it had an energy that it also gave you, right?
Yeah, it was
So, and we
efficient,
found
it had an energy, and it was
Yeah.
a 3-drop rather than a 4-drop.
Yeah, so the combination of efficient, energy, and draw card, as we discussed with the last card, is really, really, really good. Like, zero downsides. You can do it whenever it's worth an energy, you get more cards. But it also adds efficient to the next ally you play. So it's like infinitely enabling for no cost and giving you energy. At least without an energy, it's like maybe not broken early, but still in the late game, you can drop a big fat thing that costs like 5 or 6, but that eats your whole ally action. And then you're like, oh, I drew into a FuseGate Keeper. I can play it and draw another card because it's efficient. And I drew another huge buy that I didn't have the ability to play before, and it adds efficient now. And then that's how your turns get truly insane in this game, is cards like FuseGate Keeper.
I think one of the few playtest sessions I had with you guys early on, and probably a couple of months ago, I remember your deck, Christian, specifically, where you had dusted almost every energy cell in your deck, and you were playing maybe a 10 card, 9 card deck total that had 3 or 4 of these in it.
Yeah.
And every turn you just cycled through the deck, had a energy, and just did whatever you did.
Yeah, I
And it
probably
was
only had
just
like 1 or 2 like good units in my deck, but I was playing them every turn.
Yep.
Yeah. So I remember that being a thing. And then also this card comboing with cards like RUSTBURN, where we talked about how, RUSTBURN has a cap now. This card gives it maybe not a cap if you have 2 RUSTBURNs. So, for that and the draw abilities, the combos that this card can create can get out of hand potentially. So
Oh yeah.
I would
just
say that if FuseGate's in the pool, if Fusion Gate is in the pool, the winning player probably has at least 1 in the deck at the end of the game. Just a a theory.
Yeah. That's just good. That's real good. But on the note of more Fuse cards, and I think this might be why I'm still getting tripped up with it, is FUSEPORT SENTRY. Our first 5 costs in the Machina Faction. This card allows you to draw 2 cards and add efficient to the next ally you play this turn. So, very similar to Fusion Gatekeeper. There we go. Got it now. Very similar, however, this card is not efficient, and it adds efficient to the next one you play. So, which would have been good if we had gone over this set first. Might not have gotten all tripped up on how the game works with efficient cards, because it wouldn't have made sense to add efficient to a card if you've already played your ally action. But the more you know. So,
It's a good
neat,
point.
kind of, yeah, neat take on the card we just spoke about, Fusion Gate. While this one just loads your hand and lets you just do some neat things just based on what else you have. So definitely more of a late game card. I don't see this card being super effective early or even in like kind of the early mid turns. But yeah, it's neat, and this can probably just take a strategy to the end game, depending on what your pool looks like and what you're playing with.
Yeah, you really don't want to spend 5 on a card that doesn't give you more energy early, which this doesn't. But yeah, in the mid to late game, it's another one of those cards that can propel a very small hand that's been attacked a lot into relative insanity. And of course, you could play a Fusion Gate, draw this, give this efficient, draw 2 more things, give something else efficient. There are ways, Carl, to do things.
It just spirals out. I see this card being really effective when you're playing in pools that have like multiple 6-drops. I think this is probably where that card where this card would shine, and you would want to be picking it up more often than not. But I think in games where you're trying to play with a certain curve, I see this card not holding a ton of value. Probably one of the weaker of the bunch. Like I said, just because of when you would want to be playing this card. Gorby, any thoughts on this guy before? Am I missing anything? Like I said, I have 0 play testing with this card, so this one's one of the few that I haven't seen used, at least at its maximum outside of theory.
No, I mean it's just a really strong enabler. Again, not a super great early buy, but something to refill the hand after you've been decimated by your opponents or by your own relics. Or just to keep gas going if you have been relatively untouched. Maybe you somehow managed to fly under the radar for a turn, and now you can just go off with the FUSEPORT Sentry. So, not an all-star card by any means, but definitely a solid pick towards the middle of the game for sure.
And that will take us into MIRRORBALL Mimic. So another card that I think was one of those cards that until it had been modified, and maybe I'm wrong, was this one of the cards that just allowed you to go infinite? Is this that card?
I don't know. No, I think he added the clause that it couldn't copy another MIRRORBALL Mimic just because I knew that people would try to do it. But I don't think we ever did, because it's not worth an energy itself, so that'd be kind of weird. It's just like sort of a safety net. But this is flavor-wise my favorite card in the whole game, and I also like the art a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess just to speak to the effects real quick, and then I'll let you take the helm again. But yeah, 5 cost efficient ally becomes a copy of the last ally you played this turn, and you can't copy MIRRORBALL Mimic. So yeah, it's neat. It's anything you've played, especially, and again, I think it's another one of those cards that, especially in the mid game, this card becomes very, very powerful in terms of fueling at least that first or second relic. And then at the end, just powering you through to the end. If you can hold on to this with maybe just one more big drop, this card shines. So, and can just become anything that you're just trying to put a strategy together around it, and just provides extra copies of that card.
Yeah, it's another flexible enabler, and unlike the other cards that draw cards, this is sort of an enabler in that it accentuates the power of the other strong units in your deck. So, for example, I mean, obviously you're never going to start your turn with this because it doesn't do anything if you do that. So you'd probably only buy this once you have 1, 2, or 3 other really strong units, so you can reasonably expect to draw them and draw a Mimic, because then you can do, crazy things like you're playing, I can't remember, like Shogun, or I'm saying the name of a card that got errated into a different name. Any 5 or 6 cost that doesn't have efficient, you start your turn with that, mimic it, and, then you essentially have 2 of them, and you can choose something else to mimic next time you draw it. It's great.
Yeah. Neat strat. Anything to add to this guy before we move on, Gorby?
It's just something that I think really rewards thoughtful sequencing. That's a lot of the skill in this game comes from putting your turn together in a cohesive way. because there are a ton of options. Once you get towards that mid game, you're going to have 3, 4, 5 different allies in your hand, and you got to figure out, all right, I want to do this, 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 this. Oh, well, that screws that up, so we can't do it that way. And Mimic sort of adds another dimension to that, where you're maybe not getting as punished for missequencing, or on the other side of the coin, you're being plentifully rewarded for sequencing your turn correctly. Whether that be getting a second attack off with something like the Flame Blade Ninja, I think it was called, or getting more draws off with a fuse port. Yeah, there's just a ton of versatility that this card brings to the table.
And I will let you take the helm for this next guy, Mr. Dustseeker Drones.
Dustseeker Drones. Let me get him pulled up here. Where are you at, my friend? Here you are. Our first 6-drop in the Machina category. It's an efficient attacker, so it's our first attacker that we see in this category. It's worth an energy. Choose an opponent to dust 1 card from their hand, draw 1 card, or retrieve 1 card from dust. So again, your opponent's choosing. You're not actually deciding for them. So they might dust something useless like another energy cell. Then you draw 1 card or retrieve a card from dust. So it's important to note with cards like this that have the effects broken up into different lines, you do as much as you can, right? So if your opponent doesn't have anything to dust, say you're playing in just a 1 versus 1 game, and your opponent doesn't have anything in their hand,
They've already dusted their whole hand because you were super mean to them that turn.
Exactly. You can play this, get the attack off. The attack fizzles because it doesn't do anything, and then you still choose to draw your card or retrieve a card from dust. An efficient attacker is always good. You see that with like cards like Camo Cloak Archer or Mock Boot Chaser.
Mock Boot Chaser, Camera Cloak Sniper. Yes.
Is it Sniper? Okay.
Just
I think it was
so
Archer at one point.
a small rule clarification, and I'm like 99% sure I'm getting this right, unless Spencer said it changed. Your opponent will never not have a hand because there's like a safety bottom limit. Like you drop to 5, but as soon as you dust under, I think it's 2, you draw back up to 2. So like attacking someone who has 2 cards in their hand essentially just like messes with their strategy. Like they dust something, but then they draw back up to 2. You can never start the turn with less than 2. As far as I know, it's still 2. Could be 1 or 3 if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure it was 2.
You might be right. Like I said, we've never gotten to that point yet. So
I thought, and just a point of rule contention here. I thought it was at the start of your turn. If you have less cards than that, you draw up. It's not like once you dip below it automatically, you draw back up to it. I thought it was at the start of your turn. If you're starting below a certain amount, then you build back up because you need to be able to dust for relics or something like that.
It could very well be that, but I'm gonna just try to call him. I timestamped when I'm calling, so.
The rulebook available on dust2dust.games.
Is it actually though right now? It's not.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's actually a PDF there.
Oh, you should read it and see what it says, because I don't know if he's gonna answer.
It's under the How to Play session. Click here to download the full rulebook. Oh, surprise.
I hope he mentions this in it. Spencer, help! Oh my god, he's not gonna answer.
We're leaving it in.
Hey, you
God.
At 647
Please
Wait, no, we
turn
can't
that
leave
off.
that
We
in.
don't want
This is
to.
okay.
No.
No, you're cutting it out. Timestamp 32:53. Yep.
All right. Let's take this to the end, boys. We got it.
Yep.
So yeah, one of those strategies is right. Or one of those rules is right, whether it's drawing up at the end. And I will add a note at the end of this video so you can scroll to the end and see who was right. And then we will go from there. But yeah, I just to finish up on Dustseeker Drones, yeah, it's I think one of the and maybe it is, I think the only attack in the Machina faction. It just says, and just forcing your opponent to dust, but then giving you the flexibility of being able to draw, get something back from dust. Either way, you're getting another card to fuel whatever strategy you're working on. And it's a 6-drop efficient ally, which, say less. So
Yep.
I'm all for it.
Great card.
And the final card, DOMECITY Generator. 6-drop, our only shield in the Machina faction. I don't think we've looked at any other shields so far for Machinas. But it says add efficient to the next ally you play this turn, so another one of these. And when this is in your shield, add efficient to the first ally you play each turn. So I think this circles back to Gorby's mention of just being using proper sequencing, making sure that you're playing the right card at the right time to fuel a strategy as well as you can over the course of a turn. It just rewards players for being smart about how they play things and when they play things. And then this card providing just 2 energies as a shield, like Oak Tusk and a few of the others, just make it incredibly powerful. If left unchecked. If you're not playing in a pool that has a lot of attack heavy things that can attack shields, this card is just the end game. So if you're ever playing this card, then make sure you have some form of way to get rid of it if you're playing against it, and if you're not, just grab as many as you can before anybody else picks up on it.
Yeah, in a pinch, you can force a big turn by not playing it as a shield just because you need the energy right now to buy a relic or whatever it is. But obviously, if you have this sitting as a shield, your turns are going to be all pretty good. One thing to note, it really works well with cards that allow you to draw more cards. So if you have a bunch of big stuff in your deck, but it's like all attack stuff and you're not really getting more, I've run into some turns with this where I can make my first ally efficient, but it's also the only ally I have to play, so it didn't really need efficient. So if you can pair this with cards that don't have efficient and also draw you more cards, a couple of which we've probably talked about, that's a recipe for crazy turns.
Yeah, I think for me, this is almost the immediate first buy if you're getting to 6. And I'm not sure what other cards I want more than this if this is my only option and I have 6 energy. So, Gorby, final thoughts before we wrap up here.
Nothing about the Dome City generator. I think you guys nailed it. I did check the dust2dust.games website.
Okay.
Found the rulebook, and so in turn order, part 7, reset phase. Draw 5 new cards that become your next hand. Subset A. If your hand count drops below 3 cards during an opponent's turn, draw cards from your deck until you have 3 cards. So it is
3.
during the turn.
Okay, I thought it was
3.
2. Oh. Okay,
so
yeah,
the opponent's turn, and it is 3 cards. So you should never run out of cards in hand during an opponent's turn.
Attacks are still really good. They're just like, once you attack someone down to 3, any more than that is basically just forcing them to cycle potentially something they would have liked to keep in their hand for the random card on top of their deck.
Does that rulebook say, did it actually say to draw 5 at the start of your turn?
No.
Okay.
It says draw 5 new cards that become your next hand.
Right. Okay. Got it. So that's always happening at the end. I was pretty sure we had that right. I was like,
you're doing that right.
Otherwise, yeah. All right. Cool. So, and I guess this just brings us to final thoughts on the Machina set as a whole. I think pretty spot on from our first reactions. I think we were on the money as far as talking about just how all of these cards are very combo centric and kind of interweave themselves into the other factions. And again, I think this plays more to the lore too. Something Spencer wanted me to continue to note on is just how all these cards kind of interact with each other, but it plays to just the idea of this world that we're playing in. Is that the colony is taking from the Machina. They're working together. The biofauna play into the survival of all of these theories and ideas, and just how all these cards interact so well is I think what makes the story of Earth, if you will, not Earth, but Earth. That's weird to say because I feel like the spelling's not right. Right, there you go. Just the idea that us playing in this world is all of these things kind of interact and work together, which is just super neat. And every single one of these cards is fantastic. I don't think we reviewed a card yet out of these 30 that are just all of these things do something unique and awesome that can fuel any sort of strategy that you're trying to put together. So, thoughts? I'll start with Gorby before we end.
Hands down, my favorite faction. I love these little robot dudes and dudettes. They are super cool. When it comes time for players to start building their own sets to play from and everything, I mean, Machina, you can't go wrong having 2, 3, 4 of them on the board just to keep the game lively and efficient. I think this is the faction in particular that speaks best to Spencer's vision of the game. Because deck building games, I've played some that it takes almost 2 hours to finish a game sometimes. Um, and Machina in particular within the Dust to Dust world really helps sort of speed things along, get things moving, and keep things going at a pace that is fun and engaging, and lets you really feel like you're doing really cool, interesting, intricate plays that yield massive energy results. So they're the standout for me in this game for sure.
Yes. Christian, take us home.
Yep.
What are your thoughts?
It's great faction. You guys pretty much covered it, but it's got some of my favorite cards. Love the Mimic, love the Generator. Love drawing cards almost as much as I love attacking players. So, I mean, I got a deck with some Machina and some Colony. I'm a happy guy, and you should try it. It's great.
Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, leave a like below, guys. Let us know what you think. What are your favorite cards from the Machina set? And we'll be back in a day or so with a relic review. So stick around for that. And until next time, it's been fun. See you.